Paul.
Carl, pleasure to meet you. Good
nice
morning.
to meet you,
Yeah,
yes.
Thank you. Thanks for the ride to work.
Hey, absolutely. I'm glad I can
Yeah.
be the one driving you to work this morning.
Yeah.
So you're Paul Duffy. You're the relatively new CEO of
Very new.
of AIML. And so just so everyone knows, you're going to be doing a webinar next Tuesday to talk about your first 100 days with the company.
Yeah, that's correct.
And we'll get to see if you've executed on those things.
Yeah.
So for our viewers, go in the description and you'll have a registration link there. And as per usual, hit the bell buttons, follow, subscribe, and so we're going to get into it now.
Okay.
Paul?
Yes, sir.
Are you from Toronto?
I am actually from the center of the universe, Niagara Falls, Ontario.
Okay.
My background, I was born in Scotland. Like many Canadians, my family immigrated here when I was a very young guy. Moved to Niagara Falls, was there up until my late teens, early 20s. And then I have been living and residing in Toronto pretty much since then, working all over the world. So I've had homes in a number of different cities, but I've always had my primary or principal residence here in Toronto.
Okay.
And I love it. I raised my two kids here. My wife and I have had a very successful run at it with our family.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal to me. And I quite like the city of Toronto. It's changing, as you can see.
Yeah.
The traffic and the congestion, etc. But like all quite famous and international cities, it does go through some growing pains.
Absolutely. Yes, Toronto's definitely changed over the years, especially post-pandemic.
Yeah.
So where did you go to school?
High schools, down in Niagara, the region there, Notre Dame was the school. But here in Toronto, I went to the Toronto Metropolitan University.
Okay.
I did 1 year at the University of Western as an engineering grad. Realized right away computer science was me, not engineering.
Yeah.
And transferred over to Ryerson and never looked back.
Okay.
Which I guess today they call it Toronto Metropolitan University,
right.
TMU.
Now, would you say you're a competitive guy?
Short answer to that would be, in all caps, yes.
Okay. I find that's something most CEOs have, which is not a bad thing.
Yeah.
University, you come out of university. When did you get involved in your first company? Like, what was your first experience in business?
Well, that's a great question. So when I graduated from Ryerson, I went with, as most guys do, to a trip abroad. I was a month and a half, actually it was about a month or a little bit over, in the Greek islands. And I went with, I met there a friend called Ange Boodle, and he was chaperoning 4 of his nephews who were my age at the time. Ange is about 12 years older than me. And he and I got along famously, and when I had come back from the Greek islands, I had always had this itch to, create companies, be self-employed. And so after working for about 2 years, I started CCI, Corporate Communications Interactive, with Ange, down in Florida, if you can believe it.
Mm-hmm.
And it never really stopped. I've always been self-employed now for well over 30 years. And if it's running my own private companies, or as I am here at AIML, coming in as the CEO to really operate and advance the business. I just love commercializing technologies, I guess is the way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so your first experience in business, how did that go? Usually it's a rough go, you learn a lot of things.
Oh man, okay, so this is a good story. So picture 1992, I got a whopping $3,000 in my bank, and I am living in a one-bedroom apartment in Tarpon Springs, Florida, with a wok, a plastic chair, and a bridge table. And I'm trying to figure out how to use multimedia for a photographic multiple listing system, right? Which back then, nothing like that actually existed. The idea being foreclosed properties in Florida sold to snowbirds here in Canada, basically Ange and I. Not working at all, and I end up meeting a technical illustrator at AT&T Paradigm. And he goes, "What is this multimedia stuff you guys are doing?" And so I showed him, and he goes, "My God, this would work great for some of ours." So anyways, long story short, I'm in front of his boss for a 15-minute pitch of what it means to put hotspots on pictures on a computer. It was like winning the lotto. So within 6 weeks, we've an open-ended purchase order with AT&T, working out of Paradigm, Largo, Florida. Paradigm is the data communication subsidiary of AT&T. At the time, they were doing Acculink access controllers, which were actually Cisco devices, and they were selling 10 to 12,000 units of them a month. They had 5,000 sales reps that they had to bring in to train on these products. And when I showed them how we could put computer-based training on top of essentially photos of these configurable products, they just said, we have 800 of these, we're going to give you 50 grand a prop and get at it. And so for the next 3 years, Ange and I went from 2 guys in a van down by the river to just under 100 people.
This is your first company?
Yeah, first company. First year we did a whopping $16,000 in revenue.
Yeah.
And I ate a lot of pasta and tomato, lost about 30 pounds, living in this little Tarpon Springs apartment. Next year we did just under $1 million, and of course I moved to Sand Key and lived in a wonderful condo. And then things got serious. I had to hire people, and when you're 25, 26 years old, how many people are actually going to, oh yeah, I'll come and work for you.
Yeah.
So I ended up hiring my friends in Toronto, which is how I ended up meeting my wife, and all these types of things happened, and it was a big life event for me.
So Paul, if you don't mind me asking, what was the exit on that business?
Yeah. It was good. It was, I would call it a liquidity event. My partner, Ange and I owned the business 50-50, and it had no real debt. So we basically sold the company. I bought a house, Ange retired, bought a boat, and, life kind of went on. It was a lot of fun. And, after about a year of sort of an earn out and a transition, I started producttraining.com. And that built pretty quickly. Exited that in 2008. About 2008, 2009, something like that.
And what was that business?
So it was product training specifically.
Oh, that's right.
But I mean, what was interesting about it was, what I would do is it's kind of common now, but I would put what I call the digital human experience. I would stream people, subject matter experts, product experts, sometimes customers of the product, into a learning object, and I would stream it over the internet, and I would attach it to the product itself. And this worked remarkably well for things like industrial home automation, places like Honeywell were huge clients of mine, General Electric, aircraft engines, where there was fairly complicated elements to the sale of the product. Putting this into a streaming object at that time was quite novel. And so that was another exit, not quite as I would say beefy as the first one with SkillPath.
Right.
But it was fun. And I, at that point, had realized I really enjoyed building and exiting companies. I mean, now I'm in my
it's exciting.
Late 30s, early 40s. Yeah, it's quite a rush. And it's not without its problems. I'm brushing over an awful lot of pain, that kind of came about as the process.
Yeah.
But, in the end, the outcome was what I wanted. And so that was quite good.
All right, well, take us to the next adventure.
So then, as you saw there with my dog and my wife, she would trick me in the morning to walk the dog so I would get dressed. This is like 2010, 2011. And, I was kind of thinking, what should I do next? And I looked in a couple of different businesses. I dabbled in electric vehicles, which was quite interesting. Kind of came in and out of companies to think about, what my next business would be. And oddly enough, I saw the Tupac Shakur hologram on at Coachella.
Right. I remember that was the first time I ever saw a hologram.
And I think this is like around 2010, 2011. I might be wrong with those dates, but it was, a good decade ago.
Okay.
And I'm like, oh my God, that's my digital human experience, but life size. And so being a computer scientist and a bit of an entrepreneur, I just chip, I get right in there to find out how on earth did these guys do this?
Right.
And I kind of figured it out. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to spend a little bit of money and a little bit of time, and I'm going to try to figure out a way to do this, better. So Tupac was a body double, digital video, superimposed head on top, CG. And then it was used a technique called Pepper's Ghost, which is a foil under high tension that has a reflection that comes off a screen that sits at essentially a 45-degree angle to it. So if you have an image, not unlike in this car, the image will reflect up to the screen, and that's what you'll see as the hologram. And if you light it properly, it gives it the effect of volume and 3D capability. So when I was looking at that, I thought, well, first off, if I can invent a screen or a mesh that is as simple as a mosquito net, first of all, I've radically reduced the cost for setup, delivery, etc. If I work on the workflows for the creation of the content, that's good. And then I got really deep into projection systems and understanding how they operated. And through, trial and effort and, a couple $100,000, I ended up creating multi-plane visualization. So a front plane for the hologram that you see through to a back plane that is synchronized with the front plane and the rear plane to give you the impression of 3D depth, but on two flat screens.
And at that point, how important is lighting?
Very.
Okay.
You still need a fairly light contained space because the projection engines themselves, the projectors, are not strong enough, to really counter the daylight that we're seeing here. And so through a series of events, I ended up patenting and, essentially inventing and patenting holographic telepresence. So you can imagine once I've created this holographic display experience, I pull in my prior experience for streaming media. I develop codecs that are based on the Google's WebRTC platform, and I begin to actually enable the broadcast of human holograms through the public internet, which at the time was roughly 1/1000th the cost of what was currently available.
And you were probably really reliant on the internet capacity.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
So that market really came to you. It took time.
It was fabulous. What happened is everybody who was doing fiber optic channel communication was looking for, basically use cases for this quite expensive pipe. And so here comes this kid with this, advanced holographic telepresence platform, beaming guys like Tony Robbins, Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yeah.
You got Deepak Chopra, Larry King. I mean, on and on and on, right?
Did you do Warren Buffett?
I did, yeah. And
why wouldn't you?
Yeah, why not, right? Also that business, art media, got me into the public markets, such that they are. And it was a creation of, if you can believe it, Paul Anka, the Canadian entertainer. Yeah. The Barty family, who was at that time, probably still are, I haven't spoken to him in about 7 years, but a little bit of a merchant bank here in Toronto, well known in the circles for resources and public markets. So Renee Barty was my partner in that. And then, basically they had a great network, and that's how we got all these guys kind of involved to become human holograms. Ultimately, the thesis was very simple. If you need to be in 2 or more places at once because you monetize your time, we've got you covered. And that's kind of, it's still in play today. I mean, Larry O'Reilly runs the company. It's a great business. He was the former head of sales and president of IMAX for like 20 years. It's just a fabulous technology. You used to be able to go right into WeWork and beam from one city to another on these platforms.
So that company's public?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Still going today.
Really don't want to get stuck in a red light here, but
we just spit through.
Okay, so how did you exit that company?
Well, after about 4 years, your shares all come out of escrow. You're free to go. Wasn't much more I could do at that point. I mean, I'm a guy that brings it from back of the napkin to a couple $1 million.
Right.
And because for me, that's the juicy, kind of, arc, if you would, the beginning of the elbow.
Yeah,
right?
That's the most fun too.
Yeah.
And crazy.
Yeah, it's bananas, right? And it's a skill in itself, without a doubt. And so I just got really good at that. And I got a team, right? They follow me around, deal to deal. And,
That's
so,
good.
yeah, it was kind of fun. It's a good group, right? And, it's a playbook, essentially.
Yeah.
And so the exit on that was pretty simple. I just thought, you know what? Larry's in, I'm out. Company, doesn't really need a guy like me.
Yeah.
He's very capable. I'm always around if he needs me for anything. But Larry and I spent about 6 months, working together in the transition.
Right.
And it is really weird. It's kind of like fate. The day I was leaving, Gappelberg showed up, Evan Gappelberg, and had a little posse with him to have a look at, what all this hologram stuff was about. And, long story short, I left that meeting with him, and a few months later, Next Tech AR Solutions was born. And so myself, Evan, and I think 2 or 3 other guys were kind of the core founders of the business, if you would, the founding management team. And that was a fun ride. I think if anybody that knows Next Tech, they follow it.
Yeah.
Essentially what we wanted to do, and pretty much do today, is what I had done for human holograms. We want to do that for product holograms. Make them as ubiquitous and available as possible. There's some very core benefits to that. I mean, if anybody that's actually, looked to buy a product, I don't know, anything in this car, like a seat, a mat, if you want to put a painting on a wall, a Chesterfield, a fridge, etc., looking at it through your phone as a hologram and placing it into where you want it to go. Sounds simple and trivial, but in the world of e-commerce, that solves a number of key problems. None the least is returning the product because it couldn't fit through the front door,
right?
Which happens a lot.
Yeah.
But you're able to see it, feel it, pinch and rotate. You can put it on and wear it. So really what this nets out to an e-commerce company is that your conversions increase. People buy your product, more often looking at it through AR than they would just viewing a picture or a video.
Okay.
And so that was the thesis and beginning of the business. Yeah.
So is that bringing us to kind of where you are now?
Yeah. So in 2018, we had pretty much done, from my perspective, anything I needed to do at Next Tech. I'm not interested. And at that point, we had several hundred employees. The company had raised, I think, 70 to 80 million bucks. It's, Evan, he's a great driver of businesses and stuff. I'm like, there's really not much need for me to be here.
Yeah. Again, your time is numbered.
I'm just, we're looking for the next deal. And so I took a year off. I literally just, exited, and I was the president chairman. I still own several million shares in the company. I'm quite bullish on it. I think, Next Tech is going to be a phenomenal opportunity for anybody. We spent a lot of time getting really good at building 3D models and converting them to augmented reality experiences, product holograms.
Yeah.
And right now, Amazon is the biggest client. And, I just see that continuing to grow and grow. So I'm quite proud of the team. I think Evan and the guys have done an awesome job, continue to do an awesome job. And I look forward to all their success. Yeah,
Amazon's not a bad anchor to have.
It's the best. It's the biggest in the space. And like I said, it was the same with CCI, my first company, which, by the way, was in one of these towers over here. Microsoft, I remember the day I got a phone call from the head of training at Microsoft in Redmond. We want you to come and talk to us about doing our Microsoft official curriculum. And I had chills. And
yeah, no doubt.
It was just a spectacular experience. But that was the brass ring in computer-based training in the 90s. You couldn't get any bigger than that. And so that's why we elected to sell the company. I was like, Ange, there's not much more we can do here. We've done it all. Yeah.
Okay, so we're about to get into how you got involved with AI/ML. But
Sure.
before that, what does Paul Duffy do to unwind? And, listen, you're obviously a successful guy. You've got some money. What do you do with your money?
Not much. I invest it. I got a couple of kids who are now young men in their early 20s. Very entrepreneurial, very successful in themselves. So any kind of spare time I do have, aside from being their dad, I love mentoring and talking to them about businesses, they and their friends. I spend a lot of time just speaking pretty much casually with friends about that. I have a lot of, I'll call them associates, who want to talk to me about what to do with their companies.
Sure. That feels good, right?
I enjoy it immensely. It's a lot of fun. And it's funny, the when you don't look for deal flow, as they say, it just washes up all the time.
Yeah.
No, just kind of cute.
That's nice.
So outside of work, right, what I enjoy doing is, I'm in my mid-50s, I guess, at this stage. So, I love to work out. I love to go and play golf. In prior years, in a nice big sailboat, so I do a lot of sailing.
Yeah.
I haven't done that recently. And, I travel. Pre-COVID, I would travel all the time. Post-COVID, I traveled a fair bit last year, which was nice. And then after sort of being out of the game for about a year, you start to get itchy.
Right.
I start, what's next? And, obviously, it's interesting because AI started to really get into the zeitgeist. I would say kind of mid 2023. The Chat GPT gig and all that.
Yeah, that came fast.
Yeah, and I remember being in a bar with one of my friends. He's the head of marketing for wealth management, one of the big banks here, and he's like, "Have you seen this? This is going to be insane."
Chat GPT.
Yeah. And we're sitting there having a drink, and he's showing it to me, and I'm like, "Oh my God, I could have a lot of fun with that."
Yeah.
And
so that got you going.
Oh yeah, I was like, well, that was to me
Yeah.
the moment when I saw Tupac on stage.
Yeah.
Thinking, how do I
Yeah, that's cool.
take all of that,
Yeah,
right,
and leverage it.
and So anyhow, so that kind of was a moment for me. And interestingly enough, I had just finished writing a book called The Spatial Realm, which I really do have to get around to publishing. It's kind of funny. But it's a phenomenal book on how you can convert empty air space, if you would, to money. And this will happen. Low-cost, lightweight eyewear will become a prevailing thing in the next decade. Everywhere you look will have some level of digital, hologram superimposed in your field of view. And, the economics of that will either be, to be free or to be advertised model, or, you'll use micropayments to click in and get into a very rich and robust experience that's meaningful for you at that moment in time. And, as I was thinking about all that, I realized AI is going to play an enormous, part in that whole story. Again, the visualization aspect, which is the low-cost lightwear, was kind of like the hologram, apparatus that I would use to display the hologram. But the transmission, the creation of the content, the delivery of it, all has this, it rhymes, it's very similar. And so then I looked at, well, what are the deepest areas I could have the biggest impact in? And oddly enough, I got a call to go and speak to Tim Daniels at AIML about health tech. They had a couple of, I'll call them assets within their sort of basket of businesses. And I thought, well, this is interesting because I could see AI having a very formidable impact on healthcare. And not like I need to solve the whole problem in healthcare, but if I can move the needle 1 or 2%, it's a substantive move. It's hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars can be reallocated to, making patients' lives a little bit better.
Right.
And, at this point in my life, after doing what I've done, I kind of felt that was a nice sort of both commercially and economically viable, but also altruistic and social kind of, entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And so I studied AIML. It's an interesting business, but that's what got me into it, was I was looking at it from that point of view. Yeah.
So at this point, I'm going to, just let our viewers know, Paul is going to get into in more detail in the town hall or the webinar next Tuesday, everything that he likes about AIML, everything that he wants to change, and his first 100 days as CEO.
Right.
And hopefully we're going to find out about all the execution.
Yeah.
We don't have a time for that yet, but I know it's next Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm going to. I think we should kind of call it here.
For sure.
But listen, I know you didn't mention cars at all, but I was thinking,
cars.
I could be wrong, because I know you told me you had a nice car and you sold it. But were you a Porsche guy?
No. So I've had a couple of these. I'm a Jaguar.
Okay.
One of the holograms that I built was for the car designer of Jaguar Land Rover, for the British Education Technology Conference, BET they call it, in London. And so I spent 3 days with this guy, and I was just blown away by the design, the look, the intricacy of it. Designing automobiles is one part art, one part engineering, and one part science. I mean, it's a fascinating world.
That's why I thought you'd be a Porsche guy.
No. And remember, I was born in Scotland.
Right.
So
okay.
so I'm out getting my wife a car, like all of us were sitting there at the dealership, and it's a Land Rover, it's a Range Rover Jaguar dealership. And so I message Olivier when I'm waiting for their going through all the paperwork, because it's my wife's car. I message him and I'm like, dude, if I was to get a Jag, what would I get? What do you recommend? And a minute later, the message comes back and he says, it was the XJ RS Sport, short model.
We'll have to put that on the screen because I don't even know what that looks like.
Oh, either did I. And I showed the car guy, the dealer guy, whatever you call it, the salesman. Have you ever heard of that car? You got one of these here? And he goes, oh, yeah, there's only 4 or 5 here, in the city.
Oh, yeah.
And he goes, that's a really special model. The owner of the shop has it, and funny enough, it's coming off lease. They take them for 6 months, and he goes, it's actually available. And I go, come on, that's bull. He goes, no. Anyway, so I walk over, and it wasn't even plated. I couldn't take it out of the thing, but I drove it in the parking lot, and I bought the car. It was unbelievable, right? And then I was hooked. And so I had that for about 2 years, and then same dealer, same guy says to me, if you like that, you'll love the F-Type. It's the same car as your sedan, but it's in the sport model. Like
Right.
it was already a sport model sedan, but this is like a rocket ship.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the F.
Yeah, so I've had 2 of those. And the last one I had, the license plate was actually Metaverse.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and there was only a handful of those in Canada. It was very special made, custom. I wouldn't say custom made, but it was the top. Like it was so fast. I don't even know how many horsepower it was. It was dangerous, and I really enjoyed that car. But honestly, when we sold our homes and moved and all that stuff, I thought I don't need a couple of cars. I just need really one because I walk everywhere here, and that was it.
That was your experience with a really, really high end car.
Yeah, way too fast. I didn't get any tickets though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's leave it there. And again, the registration link will be in the description of this YouTube video. And if you're a fan of these interviews and these segments, I know I try to do things differently and get you a little more insights into the executives. Go on our website, sign up, become a subscriber, and let us know what your focus, your sector of focus is, so we can take that and talk to the issuers and try to line everybody up. And hopefully we're the value in the middle between the investor and the issuer. Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carl. Have a great morning. Thank you for the drive to work.
Absolutely, and I look forward to the webinar, the town hall with you and Ashley. Yeah. Ashley's got a much better personality than me, believe it or not. She's funnier than me. All right, take care, everybody.
Great.